Alright, so I'm going to do my best to explain this trick because it's very different compared to most skips that we use in this game, in that you have to rely on keeping this address that I have in the bottom left at the same value. And I'll explain a bit more of what that means in a second, but basically the best way to practice this is have some way to view the value of this address. So you can either use BizHawk, which I'm using right now, or you can use a cheat code that Drasht made to have the value stored in the spirit particle and have it either be 1 or 0, 1 being good and 0 being bad. And yeah, I'll explain more about what this all means in a little bit, but just have access to either one of those things to make your life a whole lot easier while learning this. Because you really do want to be able to see this value right here. But basically, to start with, you need to kind of figure out the places where you can and can't look at the end of level temple over there. See, right now I've looked at it from here and it's changed. It's changed to 61, which is bad. You want it to stay at 0-1 the entire time. But see, if I look at the temple right now, it stays the same. And there are ranges from where you can look at it, but it's really just best practice to keep it completely off screen as much as possible while going through it. So I'll just go through the standard path we usually take through the level because it's the fastest and most efficient gem wise. So we use it for 14 tally, and this is also faster for 40 orb too. And so now at this point I want to keep it off screen and then jump into the temple. And yeah, I'll explain all these specific parts in a little bit, but as you can see, the value still hasn't changed. And now that I'm talking to her, she loaded in for 1 frame while I was on the ground in her talk box, so that allowed me to talk to her, and then it changed. So it's actually quite particular in the way you have to go about it. So that's why there's all these like steps that we have to go through to accomplish it. So yeah, first of all, you just there are a few paths you can take, but like I said, this is the most efficient one. You get a few gems. But once you land about here, this is when you have to start thinking more about what you need to do for the skip. So you want to keep the temple off screen, obviously, because the value will change. So you want to jump up here onto this ledge and just hold L2 to keep the camera off it. I usually just do a charge jump, like glide, to kind of just get myself turned around, and then once I'm up here I just do a quick like glide, because gliding's faster than walking. So just to keep up the movement still while also keeping the camera turned, because you can't turn the camera while charging. It will always be behind Spyro, and you want it to be in front of Spyro at this point. So once you get to around here, there's a few things you can do. You want to jump from like right around here and maybe like a 45-degree angle, just to keep your camera off the temple while still being able to control yourself and get into the temple. So right here, I usually do a blind jump just for speed's sake, but if you want to take it a bit slower while you're still like getting used to it, you can actually show a fair amount of the temple from here. And like I'll just keep going until it actually changes. So right there it changed. So right about here is like your limit for triggering the temple there. So as we're coming up here, I usually just do a slight maybe 45-degree turn into the jump, and then as I do the jump I start holding R2 just to make sure that I don't have the camera on it for very long, and then you just hover straight into the side there. It's fairly lenient and it's not a hard jump. The hard part is just keeping the camera in the right place. So yeah, once you're into here, you have to start being very careful about your movement, because if you show too much at all, you'll trigger it. So what I usually do is I just glide along the side. You could walk along the side if you really wanted to, but I glide along the side while still keeping the camera kind of to my side. And once you're around like this point, you can you can just do like a standard jump over to here, just to make sure that you don't look at too much of the temple. And so yeah, this is a point that may look easy, but it's actually quite particular, at least that we found. So sometimes when you do this jump up to here, you can actually just trigger it for no reason. And also, if you fail the jump, falling down to like here has a tendency to trigger it. So you want to be very careful when you're doing this jump. And what we found is that if you hold L2 as you hover, it tends to help it tends to help to not have that issue happen. Because, like, as you can see, I'm still at 0, 1, which is what you want. So it tends to help to hold L2 as you do that hover. So once you get up here, it's a little bit blind, but if you just do a standard double jump up, you can kind of figure out where you are. And you want to jump a little bit to the right, up to here. And once you're up here, you have a few more things to keep in mind. If you jump too high, you'll trigger it. If you get your camera stuck back here, you'll trigger it. And if you go too far out this way, you can sometimes trigger it as well. But that one's a bit more rare. But it's usually best to just stay in this general area. And so what we usually do from here, or what I like to do at least, is there's this line on the ground, right, let me pull up my cursor. There's this line on the ground right here. And that's just like, it's basically just a separation of two polygons. And so what you want to do is just like get into this little corner up here the best you can and just tap up until you see Spyro shift to the other polygon. And at that point, you don't need to really touch the D-pad at all anymore until you do the jump in. So, and then after you do this, I tap jump just to get myself a little bit lower down so that when I do a full jump later, it won't trigger it in the air. So once you're down here, hold R2 to turn the camera to the right. And you want to start getting the camera stuck in the wall a little bit. And you can see on the side, the bottom right, you got this big, like, gray looking triangle shape you've made. And there's like a range of sizes you can do this with and still make it. And I usually go for around this size, maybe slightly bigger, but it's fairly lenient. But around this size is good, and at this point you're ready to go with the jump into the tally room. So the inputs we found to be the most consistent are you hold X and right, and then at the apex of your jump you switch to upright, and then very low in your descent, like right before you hit the floor, you start holding right again and then let go. So I'll try and do that here. So you hold jump and right, change to upright at the apex, and then switch back to right when you're low down in the jump, and then let go. Like that. So it's going to take a little bit of time to get a feel for that, but that's the best we've come up with. And you can go off some of my older PBs or my current one or this video to see the inputs and also the different sizes of triangle I go for. But it's quite lenient. Like I've done it at like this size even. I think it still works. Yeah. Oh, the main thing is you want the camera to be stuck so that you don't load it in too fast. Like, oh, I forgot to jump. That's on me. But you want it to be at least fairly stuck in the wall, so when you jump up, the value won't immediately change while you're still in the air. So just practice those inputs, mess around with it, find something that works for yourself. But this is the most consistent like setup that we've had going, and it's actually fairly quick to set up. Like, it doesn't take very long. So just with time, you'll get used to the inputs there. But one of the bigger issues that you might find is if you mess it up, Here, I'll actually show it what happens if you mess it up. You jump in, you mess up some inputs or something, you land here. The room's deloaded, you can't talk to the fawn. So the only way to get the fawn to load in is either hit all the satyrs or die. But an issue you may come across is if you die, you'll spawn back here if you've gotten that Zoe. So I'll just die really quick. And so now I've spawned back here, and as you may have noticed, the value was automatically set to 41 when I spawned in, because there's too much of the temple on screen when you spawn in. So that's a slight issue. So you can either re-enter the level, get this Zoe all the way over here, and die, or just avoid this Zoe initially when you're going for it. And you can do that by like hugging this side a little bit more, and it's definitely a bit safer and slower, but if you want to have that security of not spawning right at this Zoe again and having no real way to try again, then you can do that. But I usually just prefer to go through it quickly, just like that, and get zapped, and then if I fail it, I'll re-enter the level, and it's fine. But yeah, that's the basic premise of how this skip works. So if you'd prefer to practice this without using BizHawk, which is where, this is the way I usually practice it. I use my PS2 with the modded memory card, and I use this GameShark code to replace the spirit particle counter and make it so that 1 means that it is still at 0-1, and if it changes to 0, that means you've messed up and you need to reset it. So right here, if I show the temple, it'll set back to 0, and that's not what you want. Oh, what Drash set up in this code is that if you hit the right stick, it'll change back to 1, and you can just continue on with the practice. This is really convenient just to like get more used to it. It's right there, I messed it up, so just to like keep on going with this attempt or whatever at it, I'll hit the right stick and we'll just keep going. And this is really useful for like practicing this section of it over and over again. He's also included a teleport into the temple. If you hit R2, L2, or L2, R2, and triangle, you'll teleport here, and it'll automatically reset the spirit particle. So you can just keep on practicing this section to get more used to the inputs, because this is definitely the most like technical part of it right here. So yeah, it's very convenient, and it's definitely my preferred way of practicing this.